Chapter 16. Melissa Returns. As they traveled all that day, Thad was keyed up with excitement. His brothers and Wiley Branson had investigated dozens of leads like this, and none of them had led to rescue, but they felt that this one could be different. This time, Thad at least was certain they would find Melissa. They reached Fort Conoco the following afternoon and rode into the stockade. The soldiers were gone now, but the fort was held by a company of Texas Rangers. A sentry asked their business. "Tell your commanding officer we heard that he has located a white girl in Willowbird's village," Wiley Branson replied. In a minute or so, a ranger captain invited them in. Wiley Branson, Bew, Thad, and Thad's father followed them into his office. "I'm right sorry to tell you, Mr. Branson, that we did not find your girl," the man said. "Have you been up to Willowbird's camp?" Wiley asked. "Day before yesterday, I sent 2 of our men to talk to Willowbird and bring the girl here. Willowbird swore up and down that she wasn't there. He said they had traded her off to some Comanches for ponies a while back." "Do you believe that?" Wiley asked him. "No, sir, I don't," Captain Howard answered. "I'm as sure as I'm standing here that your little girl is still with Willowbird's people. He's probably decided he wants to keep her for some reason and is stalling us. Tell me how I can get to his camp and I'll fetch her if I have to whip Willowbird's whole village single-handed." Wiley's voice was bitter. "I'm tired of rousing around all over West Texas hunting for my girl and those Indians laughing in my face." "We'll go with you," Wiley's father said. "I'll go too. I can spare about 15 men to go along," Captain Howard promised. "How far away is the village?" Pa asked. "We can leave after dinner and make it before sundown," Captain Howard said. "I don't expect them to put up a fight when they see we mean business. But you never can tell about an Indian. The Tonkawas help us Rangers a lot. That's because they hate the Comanches, not because they think much of us. Willowbird has had the run-ins with the white men, mostly over stealing horses. Get Along, the tough, wily buckskin pony Thad was riding, was faster than most of the Conway riding stock. He was one of the best cow ponies they had. Thad hoped to find Little Bit if she could be found, and he wanted a fast horse to outrun the others if she needed to race the Indians for her. Captain Howard had said nothing about trying to recover a certain little black pony with a scissor-shaped scar on her hip, but Thad was determined to bring her home if she was in the camp of the Tonkawas. They rode all afternoon in the northwesterly direction. Finally, when the rays of the sun were slanting across the prairie toward them, they sighted dust. Topping a rise, they saw the Tonkawas coming on the next ridge. They were strung out without order or anything like a fighting line. It was every man for himself. The Tonkawas were riding like Jeho and yelling like a pack of hounds hot on the trail of a fox. Beyond them could be seen the smoke of village fires. The Indians kept coming toward the white men, and the white men headed straight for them. There were about twice as many Tonkawas as Rangers, Thad estimated. The Rangers split into parties of 2 or 3 to meet the scattered Tonkawas and kept from being surrounded. It looked as though there had been an unexpected battle on their hands, but for some reason the Indians had not shot an arrow. They were painted for battle and carried their bows with arrows nocked, but not one warrior raised his bow. Then a chief, the breeze fingering the eagle feathers in his eagle war bonnet, rode from the group. He held up his hand in a sign for parley. The chief was Willowbird. Captain Howard signaled his men to hold their fire while he rode ahead to meet the old chief. That was fidgety. He knew how long the ceremony such as the council among Indians could be. He was anxious to get the whole thing settled and to see Melissa and take her home. Captain Howard and Willowbird talked and talked as Thad knew they would. After what seemed a very long time, he became so restless that he felt he could not take any more waiting. He scanned the area about the camp and along the creek where the village was located, hoping to find the horse herd. Finally, he saw it beyond the creek. While all eyes were focused on the palvery between Ranger and the Chief Willowbird, he rode between the high banks of the creek. There he tethered Get Along. Creeping on the opposite bank, he watched the horses for a while, trying to locate Little Bit. For minutes that seemed like an hour, he watched them grazing, but could not locate his pony. A shrill whinny cut the air and drew his eyes to a commotion on the far edge of the grazing herd. It was Little Bit! She had recognized him. How, he would never know. She came hobbling toward him. He ran as fast as he could toward her, scattering the surprised horses. She nickered eagerly, thrusting her muzzle into his hands. He hugged her neck and then cut her hobbles. He leaped to his pony back and rode her to the creek. There he put his lasso rope around her neck. If there were any horse guards with the herd, he had not seen them, nor had they discovered him. Perhaps they too were curious watching the palvery going on outside the village. Leading Little Bit, he rode to the outskirts of the bargaining party and watched proceedings from the shelter of the timber. He watched until he saw Willowbird send a messenger into the village. In a few moments he saw the brave returning with a middle-aged woman and a girl. His heart was pounding with anticipation. This girl must be Melissa. He was sure she was when he saw her pass to Willowbird, who led her to Captain Howard. Thad began edging toward the captain now, leading his pony. Melissa was taller and thinner than he had last seen her. She seemed dazed. Even when she recognized her father and Bew, she stood looking at them with an air of embarrassment. Her father took her into his arms and kissed her. "Lizzie, Lizzie, my baby," he murmured over and over while Bew patted her awkwardly on the shoulder. Captain Howard handed money to Chief Willowbird. Evidently, it was the price agreed upon for Melissa's ransom. Mr. Branson had given it to the captain for that purpose. Thad decided this was the time to press his own claims, so he rode up to the group leading Little Bit. "I have brought the girl's pony," he said to Captain Howard. "Will you ransom her too?" Captain Howard looked from Thad to his father and then to Wiley Branson. Thad's father took the situation and stepped forward. "I'll ransom the pony," he said. "How much?" The chief held up the fingers of both hands and seemed disappointed when his father paid the $10 without bargaining. He had missed the half of the fun of the deal. "It was worth $10 to end that everlasting dickering," Father Conway said. He rode beside Thad as they started toward the fort. Wiley Branson and Bew, with Melissa riding between them, caught up with Thad and his father in a few moments. "Howdy, Lizzie," Thad greeted her, grinning. She looked him over as though she didn't recognize him. Then she replied, "Oh, Thad, I didn't ever think I'd see you again." Thad's eyes were shining as he reined his horse alongside hers. "We've got a lot to talk about, Lizzie, when we get to the fort. I have 1,000 questions to ask you." "I want to ask you some too," she said. Then the whole party fell into a steady, mile-eating pace. But Thad, riding along beside the Bransons, kept Melissa constantly in view. He felt that he must never let her go out of his sight again. "Those Tonkawas didn't want to battle any more than we did," Captain Howard said, laughing as he dismounted at the fort. "One of our braves had taken a shine to Melissa and wanted her for his own squawk. Old Willowbird thought he could bluff us into believing he had traded her. He'd have been talking yet if I hadn't threatened to destroy his village." Mrs. Howard had taken Melissa over as soon as she got to the fort. When Thad and his father entered, they were told to wait for her. Wiley and Bew were waiting too. Soon Melissa came into the room, accompanied by Mrs. Howard. She was dressed in a pink calico instead of the ragged doeskin squawk dress she had been wearing before. Whenever Thad was outdoors, Little Bit kept as close to him as she could. She would lay her head on his shoulder and nick her softly. The following day the Bransons and Conway started home. At first, Thad left Melissa with her father and brother. Wiley wore a happy grin most of the day. Every little while he would say, "Lizzie, my little girl, my baby, you finally came back." The second day of their homeward travel, Thad rode beside Melissa some of the time. They laughed over the things that had happened to them in Yellow Cloud's camp. Thad had to tell her why he was never able to catch up with her after they heard the Indians chasing them. He explained how he had turned so that they would follow him instead of Melissa, but she had guessed all that. Melissa found it difficult to express her thoughts in English at first, so long as she had spoken in the tongue of the Comanches and Tonkawas, but Thad got to tell her the story of what had happened after she had left that morning. He was anxious to learn why Little Bit had not managed to bring her directly home. "Oh, that was my fault," Melissa said. "You told me to let her have her head, but one day I thought we were lost. I reckon I just wasn't in my own head by then. I kept pulling her to the left when she wanted to go to the right. That's when we really got lost, I guess." "Was it then that the Tonkawas found you?" "I don't remember seeing them," she said. "By that time, I was so sick the first thing I remember when I came to my senses in their village. I was in one of their little brush wickups, but I thought it was a teepee. That made me think I was in Yellow Cloud's camp again. There was only one person in the village who could speak a little English, but some of them could speak Comanche, so I found out where I was." Mrs. Conway and Dulcie did everything love could do to help Melissa forget the hardships she had been through. It seemed for the first few weeks that she took greater comfort in being with Stevie than with any of the others. He was a bright, good-humored little fellow, and he had been his sister's special pet since the day he was born. There was something Thad was anxious to find out about. How come Little Bit stayed with Willowbird's herd instead of heading home when she got a chance? "They staked her every night," Melissa told him, "and they hobbled her every day. They thought she was my pony, so they were keeping her for me." "Would you like her?" Thad asked. "Would I like what?" Melissa didn't understand what he was leading up to. "Would you like Little Bit to be your pony?" Thad asked. A smile lighted her face. "Oh, I'd love to have her for my own," she said. "I love that pony. If it hadn't been for her, I might still be with the Comanches or dead somewhere on the prairie." "You can have her," Thad said. "From now on, she's your pony." Never before had Thad felt so much pleasure in giving away a cherished possession. He loved both the girl and the pony with all his heart. "But you love Little Bit as much as I do," Melissa protested. "I really should not take her." "Oh, I'm getting too long-legged for a little pony like her," Thad explained, as though that were the real reason. Continue listening.